Are you ready to get intimate? What is intimacy? And where and how do you find it? Welcome to the Getting Intimate podcast, a daring journey into the heart of intimacy with you, your senses, the whole world, and all the creatures in it. Intimacy can be a pretty wild ride, filled with both longing and apprehension. But what if the vulnerability of intimacy isn't something to be avoided, but celebrated? What if getting intimate is the key to finally coming alive? So, welcome to this episode of the Getting Intimate podcast. And today we will be diving into our senses and how they can nourish and nurture us if we just let them. And as my co-explorer, I've invited Shannon O'Hara, who is a facilitator of consciousness, an author, and creator of Talk to the Entities. And Shannon grew up with the tools of access consciousness. Her dad is Gary Douglas, and her work has always gone really deeply into this area or world of bodies and the joy of embodiment. And over the years, I've been so inspired and learned so much from her. So welcome, Shannon.
Thank you so much, Kat.
And let's just jump in. So in your work with bodies and entities, a key area is awareness. So how do you differentiate between physically feeling something and truly sensing in a way that actually contributes to the body?
Bodies feel. We as beings have senses, and it can become very confusing for us when we start calling what we sense is, when we start identifying with feelings, because really if we separate that feelings are body is the body reality. I feel hot, I feel cold, I feel hungry. Those are all body sensations. When we start to go into I feel unhappy, I feel weird, now we're leaving physical sensations and we're starting to call, we're leaving body feelings and we're starting to call sensation, which could also be called awareness or perception of that the being has. You're now labeling that feeling which is a mislabel.
Right. So if we look at our senses, and I get that we have way more than five, and so does science at this point. We talk about between, I'd say, 9 to even up to 32 senses. It depends a little bit how you look at it. But how does our senses give us awareness?
I wonder if it's senses that give us awareness or if it's awareness that gives us sensation.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, imagine if we were raised in societies that put energy into developing sensation or awareness or perception. We obviously, and what I mean by that is if we look at the education system and the way that most of the societies that we live in today are built, it's based on, think. You're really in your head, there's a lot of thinking, which doesn't have to do with perception and developing what isn't a thought. Or what can't be thought about, and perception and even sensations aren't thoughts. So has there been much prioritization of awareness, sensation, and perception? I would say for the most part, for most of us, that's a big no. And even if we perceive and are sensitive to things that are outside of our family's norm or society's norm, we're essentially taught, either verbally or non-verbally, but definitely taught, that those perceptions, those sensations aren't really appropriate. So we lose a lot of sensation and perception that could be of stuff that's outside the norm, which, one could argue is a crime against humanity.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things that I've been looking at a lot lately is how much we numb ourselves down, how much we live
Yeah.
we really try to get comfortable with everything, like with
Mm,
like even how we experience, like we like it the right temperature, we like the food we like, we listen to the music that
mm,
we're already used to. We don't like we don't try new food because the consistency is weird. Like we keep ourselves in a very little box. So we
mm.
also like that numbness kind of creates this box of no sensation. So what in your like how you view it, what is that creating? And also, what's the reason? Is that part of the learning that we shut our like our sensorial experience down from like we have this sensorial organism, but we seem to not use it in our life and living?
I mean, we have to acknowledge that a numbed down population, as you call it, is far easier to control
Mm,
than a highly perceptive, present
mm,
population that's willing to face, perceive, and engage with uncomfortable truths or realities.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So that goes back to what you were saying about us really being trained
yeah,
not to notice from our not perceive, be aware, and sense the world.
yeah. And like, I get it. I get like the wanting people to be more controllable because like any parent can kind of has this like guilty awareness of like, yes, I get like wanting your children to be more like controlled. Like I get the temptation and the seduction of that way of thinking. Um, And I believe there is a place to look at cooperation with energies that are not, that isn't about control. And so if we're really talking about are we accessing our senses, either our body senses or our being senses? Um, and do we prioritize the acknowledgement of the senses? Do we want to have more sense? I mean, I went on a walk today and I was freezing. I accidentally thought it was warm because yesterday it was super warm in England where I live. And then today the temperature dropped like a ton and I was like naive and I went out without the right clothes. And half an hour in, I was like, my body was starting to give me signals of like, this is bad. Like we need to get out of this situation. And I have been prioritizing having moments, if not larger spans of moments of discomfort in my life and to being able to
Mm,
tolerate being really cold, being really hot, but not just tolerate it, but also be okay with it. So
mm,
and then also being hungry or, you know, being in a super crowded place that I physically want to get out of immediately and letting myself be in the discomfort and noticing if after the discomfort I feel better
yeah.
or after the discomfort I feel worse. And then I know that that discomfort was either a discomfort that makes my organism stronger or my organism and my psychic space has been taxed. So
Mm,
I like to I think that there's a I you know I think there's a difference between senses that sensitivity is so oftentimes seen as a weakness. And I believe it's because it's not accompanied with the awareness of what you're sensing, which is if you're in like Waterloo Station in London, and if any of you guys have ever been to Waterloo Station at rush hour in London, it is packed, like packed, or any large group of people that are sort of on a mission to not pay attention to each other.
mm,
If you add sense or sensitivity to that environment, you're going to start picking up on everybody else's unconsciousness and everyone else's lack of um,
mm.
cooperation with the nature around them. Which, if you don't add awareness of, I am now sensing others, this is not my discomfort, that's when I think sensitivity starts hurting. But when you're really cold, for example, that's a different kind of discomfort. That's not a psychic pain or an awareness of other people's unconsciousness. That's an awareness of a biological reality.
And I also really love how you say you've been actually exploring, putting yourself like being more hungry or cold or putting yourself in group situation and then noticing what happens after. Because I think people, they're not willing to stretch their comfort zone. And that goes for
Right.
consciousness, awareness. Like we like staying in the comfort zone of what we already know, what we already decided is safe. But then what you're describing is making a conscious choice to stretch the comfort zone, but also being aware of how that affects you or what actually occurs. So,
Right.
because one of the things that also happens is that because we stay in our comfort zone so much, we go in automatic. It's also one of the reasons why time seems shorter as we get older because we are so like life, when you look at time, a day for a kid can feel like a week. But for an
Right.
adult, the day usually feels like, that went really quick. That was that day. And when neuroscience look at that, it's because there's so little new input into the brain. So
Hmm.
the brain just feels like, oh wow, well, nothing really,
Right.
nothing really pushed my boundaries here. So this
Hmm.
like being really like pushing the comfort zone, being really sensorily aware,
Yeah.
also allows you to experience more things, which really allows you to kind of like seize the day, even if that sounds a bit cheesy.
Or like really live.
Really live. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I really love that, like you're actually looking at, like you're pushing it, but then you're looking at what that does that create.
I I have a lot of thoughts. I go through this thinking process a lot about discomfort, and because discomfort is a sense,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like what's good discomfort and what's bad discomfort. Because discomfort, I feel like we don't have enough words because really discomfort comes in so many flavors and it has so many different purposes. Discomfort, I guess there's the argument that discomfort is like helps you stay alive. So like when you're
Mm,
uncomfortable from being thirsty or because your hand is burning, like that discomfort is a signal of you need to get up or you need to move. You need to move, essentially.
mm, mm.
And then there's the discomfort of like hitting your head against the wall, like literally or metaphorically, which so many people do in life.
Yeah.
Like I literally ran face first into a glass door the other day, which is a whole story about awareness and like living with people who are like buying lies and living from lies and
Mm,
suppressing their
mm,
awareness and like that's that cooperation with a more conscious, I guess, society or family um that I play around with a lot. uh I sort of lost my train of thought, but I there's so anyways there's I'm 46 now, and I'm noticing that like my physiological capacities have deteriorated like in the last like I'd say like 8 years. Like I'm really noticing a change, and everyone's like, you're getting older, da 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 da. So there's okay, either that's a reality or that's a point of view or a combo or what else is possible. So I was talking to a trainer, a physical, somebody who does a lot of, in my opinion, very smart uh, exercise training. And I was having a conversation with him and I was like, I hate this kind of intense input into my body. And he goes, well, what if you saw that hate as really doing it for your future self? And
mm,
there's this intensity, i.e., sensation, that we experience when we use our biology in particular ways. And in this context, I was talking about like physical training or resistance training, internal strength training. And there's a level of intensity you get to with your nervous system and biology that I really try to avoid because it's hard. And it's not a sensation because it's literally, he said to me, well, you are actually, in fact, creating micro injuries to your
mm,
biology to achieve biological growth of tissues. Um, and I was like, right, so how do I get to peace with consciously like creating conscious biological injury to grow my muscle mass essentially and my ligaments and tendons and develop neurological connectivity? Because that doesn't really feel very good. It's like your body's like saying like, I don't like using this much energy. Stop using this much energy to do this. I want to conserve energy. And so we biologically start conserving more and more energy as we get older because nature is like always trying to like conserve energy.
mm, Mm.
Um, and so it's really being, I guess, like smarter than like where is the effective dose of sensation that creates versus the avoidance of sensation that is either confronting or uncomfortable or naughty, because so many senses are naughty, like so many sexual senses or psychic awareness or being aware of other people's universes. I mean, there's just so much no-go zone
Mm.
psychically and biologically on this planet in our society. It's like, yeah.
But that's such a good way of putting it, that like, where is that? Like, where is that zone? And so if we look at it that way, if we're numbing down, if we go back to that, like that thing
Mm.
of like numbing down,
Yeah.
does that then mean that we're actually shutting out like the awareness or the pings
Well,
that
of
our body
course.
is giving us?
Well, of course, but I think we have to ask the question like, okay, so what is the numbing down aimed to achieve? And
Yes.
if we look at that the numbing is a form of coping with something that you either don't know how to deal with or were never given the tools to deal with or are not allowed to deal with, the numbing is a coping, which I mean, how
Mm.
boring, like to spend your
Yeah.
whole life like just coping. Like I want
Yep.
to, and that's the thing about like what would really living be?
Yeah. I love that. Like, I mean, how boring is it to live your life just coping? And how many people live
Yeah,
their life just coping? Not because
yeah,
they're
yeah,
wrong or just because that's
yeah.
all they know. Like that's all they know. And I was looking at this talk to the entities. We you mentioned that a little bit before, and I've been exploring sound a lot lately. And in
Hmm.
that, I've also been
Yeah.
exploring drumming, which is interesting. I've never drummed before. I've never and what I've noticed is that because I've been drumming more, listening more to drums, um, I suddenly hear a lot more overtones.
Right.
I actually hear the drum in a whole new way that
Hmm.
I didn't even know existed. I didn't
Hmm.
know a drum
I
had
love that.
like
Yeah.
all these aspects and layers to it. So I'm wondering if you could look at that with entities. Like how does our senses of entities or the spirit world, like how if we numb all of it down or if we start opening up, what happens? Like how would you describe that, even if it's for you and your experience?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for codifying it as me and my experience, because
Yeah.
really that's a vast question. But one thing I can speak to quite confidently that would in fact that would be impactful to the majority is that awareness doesn't go away. So like we would consider like entity awareness, excuse me, entity perception in the awareness arts. There's a bunch of other awareness things as well, like awareness of the future or awareness of like if you're psychic, if you can hear people thinking, um, you can read people's minds, right? Like all this stuff that's sometimes considered fiction, but to some people isn't fiction. Uh, so awareness doesn't go away. You can only go unconscious to it.
Mm.
And so going unconscious to awareness of entities might necessitate using a lot of drugs or alcohol. And then when you go unconscious to stuff like entities, it starts twisting into stuff like psychological disorders, eating disorders, alcohol and substance abuse disorders. So or just not feeling good. Like there's also just like I feel weird. I feel depressed. I feel weird. I hear voices. I don't feel normal. Like that's the low grade. And then it escalates into other stuff, or it can escalate into other stuff. But when you say yes to awareness, even if you can't define it or like control it or understand it initially, because you have to remember, we were not educated to deal with spirits or entities. In fact, we were miseducated. Most people receive their education about spirits from movies, which is such a sadness and against, I think, a crime against humanity. Because could you imagine if you learned everything that you would ever know about sex from porn,
Yeah.
and how what an injustice that would be to your sexual reality? Um, so when it comes to entities, as soon as you say yes, And as an adult, you have to say yes with some trust because you've already been miseducated hugely against it. So imagine like you're 4 years old and you haven't seen a horror movie and you haven't been raised in an environment that was entity negative, and it was okay for you to be aware and to be different, and you say yes. So what occurs is all of the energy you used to exclude or shut down that awareness becomes available to you. So you get all of this energy return that you've been using to like build a wall against. And you also get you get parts and pieces of you back, because to exclude awareness, you have to invalidate being.
Yeah.
So you essentially get these parts of you that you haven't had access to. And that, I don't know what that sounds like to people, but when you experience that, it is relief on so many levels.
Wow. And if I go back to the drum, just as an example, once you hear the overtones, like
Mm-hmm.
something like that, you can't unhear it. This is like now it's there. Like it's like
Right.
I fine-tuned whatever I'm perceiving, or it's now. So for me, that's how my world grows in a lot of ways. Like when I start exploring something and then I am saying basically yes to more awareness, then the world for me gets bigger. So when you're talking about entities, it's like you're letting a whole world in that wasn't available before at all. And most people probably don't even know it's not available.
Weirdly, so many people know it's available. That's why there's so many stories and movies about
Mm.
ghosts. People know what's going on, but it just is not a socially acceptable conversation. So I try to bring it up as much as I can in as insignificant and insignificant way as possible. And what would it be like if, talking about ghosts wasn't a taboo, if it was just a normal thing?
Yeah, and you do that so well. Like there's no significance and no like it's not a dramatic thing. It's a natural thing.
Yeah.
So if somebody listening to this, if they feel numbed down or kind of like on automatic, is there
Hmm.
any like tool or something that you could suggest that they could use to, start opening up to becoming more alive through their senses, both being and body?
Ooh, I can think of like 15 hard things there. I'm not really sure which one I should. Um, well, I just facilitated an Access Foundation class over the weekend in Poland. And one of the things that came up in the class was question. Like, what is a
Mm.
question? And one of the things I like to use to teach about question is I bring up, okay, so do you ask for much in life? Do you ask? Or are you asking for enough? Are you comfortable with asking for things, et cetera, et cetera? Because ask is a form of question. And so one of the exercises I suggest for those that are game for increasing the ask and learning about question is to prioritize asking for one different and new thing every day, little, medium, and big.
Mm.
And learning what the difference and like really getting clear in your own universe. What's a little ask? Like, can you pass me the salt? Right? Or could you fold that laundry? Like, I still have to. This morning I went through this whole ask thing from in my own universe. Like in my marriage, we sort of have like our tasks that we do. Like right now, my husband's meeting with the roofer. I don't meet with the roofer, but I am responsible for the majority of the laundry in the house. Happily, like laundry is I'm one of those chores that I enjoy. But I asked my husband this morning, I was like, do you think you could fold those sheets? And I noticed I was kind of cringing when I asked him, and I was like, I shouldn't ask him. And I was like, why not? Like, and then I tried to be like, it's okay to ask him because I usually fold all the sheets myself. And I went on this whole justification
Right.
and I was like, whoa, just for asking my husband to fold the sheets. It's like, and I went, wow, okay, so that's an area I'm not comfortable asking in. But I did it because I want to practice my ask, right? So folding the
Mhm.
sheets is maybe like a little ask. And then there's like the big asks, the big life-changing asks, like whoever folds the sheets, that's not really life-changing, but then there's the big life-changing asks. Um,
Mm.
which for all of us are slightly different. And are you asking for enough? And is your big ask there? So that's I suppose that's an exercise, because asking might make you uncomfortable, and that might be the kind of discomfort that's good.
Yeah. And like really asking for the things you don't even think you're allowed to ask for, that you don't
Mm.
even think you can ask for, the things that, oh, they won't show up anyway, like all of that. Yeah. Pushing out the comfort zone a bit to expand, like getting out of that box.
Yeah, and asking is a muscle that once you do it, the more you do it, the better and better you get at it. And um and I know that as adults, most of us don't really push through until we get what we want. We give up really early on. Probably mostly because most of us were taught not to ask, like, by
Oh,
people who, we didn't get we asked, we didn't get what we want, and then we were like gaslit into buying that our ask was an imposition or hurtful to others, which it isn't. Everyone has free will. So it's, if you like, this is another ask exercise to develop your life force, so to speak. I suggest in the money classes that I facilitate is like, you have to ask. And so if we all went out on the street, let's say for an hour, let's say a group of 15 of us who were learning to ask for greater and wanted more money in our lives and were really to ask and reach for it. We went out for 1 hour on a busy city street somewhere, wherever. And for 1 hour, we had to ask everybody for money. And we had to develop this way of doing it. Like, hey, do you think I could borrow? Can I get 50 cents? Can I get $5? Hey, do you have a pound? Do you have a euro? Can I, like, just asking for money? Um, you would be shocked how much money you would get. Yes, people would say no, but a lot of people would say yes. And
mm.
we as adults haven't really gone to that extreme of teaching ourselves that if we ask and if we're persistent in our ask, we will receive. Um,
But you know, another thing that would happen with that practice is we would become extremely present through all, like noticing the people, noticing the
mhm,
possibilities, noticing
mhm.
who we are, like how we show, like all of that completely present. And I bet that after a day like that, you would have the sense of being so alive because you've been pushing again, against that. So, yeah, I love that practice is so scary to me and brilliant.
I do a super. I think I don't know if this will make people cringe, but I have a pretty consistent practice of like asking people. Like, we flew back from Warsaw the day before yesterday, and I was in the airport buying a book, and my husband was really far away, some other part of the airport, and I didn't have enough money, and I like really was just trying to use all my zloty before I left Poland and cash, and I didn't want to use my card, and I wanted to buy this book, and I was like short some zloty, and there was this guy standing near me, and I was like, you think you could pay for the difference? And I went through this whole battle in my head of don't ask, it's rude to ask, and I could feel all of his barriers and his stuff. But I was like, what's the worst that's going to happen? They'll just say no. But if people always say yes to me. So, and I had to work through his all awkwardness about it. And I was just like, and then I just got him to pay for the difference, which was a small amount, but it wasn't even the money that was the thing. It was asking for something from a stranger pushes me to do something hard,
Yeah.
socially hard, that makes it easier to make connections, to get what I want in life. And my ask wasn't an imposition on him. He felt received and greater for being able to help me afterwards too. And I thanked him profusely, and it was a lovely energy.
Yeah, yeah, because there's also brings up the energy of the simultaneity of gifting and receiving in that
Mm,
moment. You allow him to give, you're inviting him to give to you. He
yeah,
gives to you, and then you receive, and he perceives like there's so much happening in that moment that it's just
yeah.
like, yeah, coming alive. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So what would it take for people to actually take you on that challenge? Thank you
And then
so
that
much.
was, and I don't think that that's a really easy one to start with, but it's the kind of stuff I do to make my life greater. And if we even take the sense conversation where we started this from, like all the senses that are involved in asking for stuff, the
Yeah.
sense of embarrassment, of shame, the sense of everything that the other person is going through, the barriers, the reasons and justifications they have for why they should and shouldn't give. Um, it's
The way the way your body reacts to you
right.
doing it, you know?
And
Yeah.
also understanding by your physiological sensations which other person is the best ask. Like who
Yeah.
could you ask and get the most yield from the ask?
Yeah.
And those are all senses that we don't even really tend to act on or acknowledge.
Mm. And we read so much through it. Like we read body language, we read like the way somebody really breathes or
Yeah.
shows up in the world. And all of that is our senses that is giving us the awareness of like who to ask, and who would receive us. And yeah, training those, it can't hurt coming alive if you have
Well, it
more.
might hurt in the moment, but it will make those micro
Sure.
injuries that allow you to grow greater over
Yes.
time.
And then we're back with the body and the trainer again, the micro
Yeah.
injuries that actually create the muscles of,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. The muscle of ask, the muscle of
yeah,
receive.
yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for exploring. We always go to the most unexpected places, and I love that.
Well, Kat, I mean, I think I'm a bit of a freak. So thank you for valuing my contribution.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Bye.
Bye, everybody.